Hi everyone, and welcome to the Foundations of Gambling video for the Y4Y Digital Media Contest. This is the first of 2 videos for the contest, and these videos are mandatory. They'll provide you with everything you need to know to participate. This video will provide you with a foundation of knowledge that will help you to better understand the contest topics. Specifically, we're going to review the basics surrounding gambling, like the definition, what we mean when we say harm reduction, the difference between skill and chance, and odds and probability. You may choose to weave this information and these ideas through your submission, so this is important information to know. Lastly, we're going to wrap up this video with why the Y4Y contest exists and why we talk to youth about gambling. So first, what is gambling? Our program defines gambling as risking something of value when you don't know if you will win or lose. We can break down the definition of gambling into 3 parts. First is risk. The activity that you're betting on has risk because you cannot control or predict the outcome of that activity 100% of the time. Next is value. This is whatever you're wagering. This is different for every person. Lastly is prize. This is what would be potentially won if you were to win the bet. This will change depending on what is bet. Let's review an example to better understand the elements of gambling. So if you were to purchase a raffle ticket at a silent auction, the first element would be risk, and the risk is that the draw of the raffle tickets is random. You cannot control what happens, and you don't know if you'll win. The value is the money that you wagered to purchase the raffle ticket. Lastly, the prize is whatever the raffle prize you've put your ticket in for that silent auction. Next, we're going to quickly define what problem gambling is. Problem gambling is when the activity impacts or interferes with a person's life in a negative way. The signs of problem gambling will differ from person to person, so it's important to consider how the activity is impacting their life specifically. Some signs of problem gambling include stealing money to continue gambling, money disappearing and reappearing, being physically fatigued, anxiety or depression when unable to gamble, lying to hide your gambling behaviors, or not being interested in the activities you once enjoyed. Again, the signs will be different for everyone, and it's important to note you can also experience harm from gambling without being diagnosed with problem gambling. We're going to talk a bit more about that later in a few slides. The 3 principles listed on the screen here are important to our program, and we want them to be foundational in your submissions as well. First, your submissions should be gambling neutral. This means that no value judgments are made regarding gambling. Instead, gambling is viewed as an activity that people may or may not choose to engage in. Next, your submission should be balanced. This means that both the pros and cons of gambling should be discussed in your submissions. Lastly, your submission should have a harm reduction focused approach. Harm reduction is the process of minimizing the risks of an activity. For example, there is a risk of getting in a car accident when driving in a car. For this reason, we wear a seatbelt to reduce that risk. Some other examples include using a bicycle helmet when riding a bike or wearing a life jacket in the pool. Your submission must include a way to stay safe that is relevant to the topic you've chosen. In the next video, we will provide you with many specific harm reduction strategies that are relevant to each topic. But I'll provide you with an example here as well. If your video is talking about unlocking loot boxes, you may want to encourage players to research the odds of the loot boxes before opening them. This would reduce the harm because the player can therefore make a more informed decision. They may choose not to unlock the loot box because they've decided that the odds of winning their desired skin are not great, and therefore it's not worth risking their points. Alternatively, they may learn that the odds of receiving their desired skin are better and will choose to risk their points. More information on odds and probability is coming in the few slides, so just hold tight on that. The reason we employ harm reduction strategies is because there is a risk. The risk in gambling is that you're wagering something of value, you're risking something of value on an outcome that is chance-based. So what is chance and what is skill? This slide outlines the difference between games of chance and games of skill. Games of chance have an outcome that is random and outside of the player's control. You cannot practice to get better at games of chance. This means that someone who's first time playing the game is just as likely to win as someone who is experienced and played the game many times. An example of a game of chance is flipping a coin. A game of skill is when a player can practice and become better at the game. There are strategies and specific skills that can be used to help the player improve at the game. For games of skill, an advanced player, for instance, someone who's been playing soccer for many years, will do better than a beginner or novice player who just started playing soccer today. It's important to understand the difference between these two types of games when creating your submission, because gambling activities are chance-based. However, video games are mostly skill-based. The lines between these two elements are blurred, meaning it becomes unclear whether the activities we're participating in are gambling or gaming. We want to unblur them so that we can play safe and reduce the harms associated. So, as we said, games of chance are random. But what do we really mean when we say random? So what is randomness? Random means that your odds stay the same regardless of how many times you play that activity. The outcome is random and unpredictable. If a coin is flipped twice, there's no guarantee that the first flip will be heads and the second flip would be tails. Odds. Your chances of winning compared to your chances of losing. A coin has two sides. The odds of getting heads is 1 to 1. You have one chance of winning and getting heads and one chance of losing and getting tails. Before playing a game, it's a good idea to know your odds, just so that you know your chances of winning in comparison to your chances of losing. Probability. This is your chances of winning divided by the total number of outcomes. A coin has two sides. The probability of getting heads is 1 to 2. One side is heads, and there are two sides total. Understanding odds and probability and randomness helps you to understand the game better and understand your chances of winning. If someone chose to place a bet, knowing the odds will hopefully influence the bet that they place. So now that we've gone over the basis of knowledge we want you to know before going into the contest topic video, we're going to talk a bit about youth relevancy. So why does the Y4Y contest exist, and why do we talk to youth about gambling? The purpose of the contest is to raise awareness of youth gambling, youth problem gambling, and introduce ways to stay safe if one chooses to gamble. But why do we want youth to know this? There are 3 reasons. First, we know that youth are participating in gambling activities. Second, gambling problems affect youth. And third, gambling is a potentially harmful activity. So the first reason we talk to youth about gambling is because youth are gambling. On this slide, we have some common types of gambling activities. When youth first sign up for the Y4Y contest, they often tell the program coordinator that they thought gambling opportunities only existed in these common forms. For example, the casino, sports pools, card games, lotteries, scratch tickets, or horse racing. So, thinking about those common types of gambling, what percentage of youth in Ontario participate in activities like those? For this statistic, it's important to note we're talking about high school-aged students in Ontario. Research has shown that 30% of Canadian teens participate in those common types of gambling activities. However, this statistic may not be telling the whole story. There are also unconventional types of gambling. These are activities that may not initially come to mind when you think of gambling. For instance, buying a raffle ticket, playing for keeps, or betting on the outcome of a video game with skins. However, these are still gambling activities, and I'm going to explain how. You may be playing a video game where you have to use a life to attempt to beat a level. When you run out of lives, the game may offer you the opportunity to purchase additional lives with in-game points or real-world money. This is gambling because you're risking something of value, like your points or your money, on an uncertain outcome. Your points are valuable because you used your time to acquire them, and the outcome is uncertain because although you may develop skills related to the game, ultimately the outcome of that level is random. Think of Candy Crush. If you purchase a life to try again at a level, the candies that drop down are still random and out of your control. This is how something like risking points in a game becomes gambling. A second example that we have listed here is betting on the outcome of a video game with skins. Skins are a decorative in-game item that people can bet with in video games or with their friends. Skins are valuable because you either gain them through your time playing a game or you may use real world or virtual currency to purchase them. We're going to talk more about skins in the next video, but this is another way that unconventional gambling opportunities are found within video games. Youth may be participating in these activities and not realizing it's gambling. Therefore, the past statistic that we reviewed that read 30% of youth in Ontario have gambled may not be perfectly accurate, as it doesn't include these unconventional forms. Regardless, we know that youth are participating in these activities, which is why it's important we're talking to youth about the potential risks, how to stay safe, and what resources exist for support or more information. The second reason we talk to youth about gambling is because gambling problems affect youth. Here we've outlined the number of youth and adults who report having a gambling problem in the general population. These values are shown in percentages. To review, problem gambling is an addictive disorder that negatively impacts one's life in a variety of ways. The definition and signs of problem gambling were discussed earlier in this video, so if you need clarification, check back now. When looking at the research, 6.9% of 18 to 24-year-olds report having a gambling problem. This means that out of 100 people between the ages of 18 and 24, almost 7 of them have reported a gambling problem. This is the highest rate out of any of the 3 age groups. However, just below that, 4.7% of youth between the ages of 14 and 18 have reported a gambling problem. This means that out of 100 youth that are in that age group, almost 5 of them have reported a gambling problem. This is before they're even able to gamble legally. So thinking back to what we've already discussed, it's possible that youth in this age group are participating in these unconventional types of gambling. This is the second reason why we talk to youth about gambling. We want to reduce the likelihood of the development of problem gambling. So we encourage youth to implement harm reduction strategies and use resources that we recommend. Lastly, we talk to youth about gambling because someone may experience harms as a result of gambling. On this slide, we've shown the continuum of gambling. Someone's relationship with gambling can move left or right on the spectrum throughout their life. However, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, you may experience harms. For example, Fred recreationally gambles by playing poker with his friends every so often. One night, he fails to stick to his budget and places a bet of $100. He loses the bet. The next day, Fred is required to pay his phone bill, but he doesn't have any money left to pay it because he lost the bet he placed. Fred either takes a penalty for not paying his phone bill on time or has to borrow money. This is a harm that Fred experienced as a result of his gambling. However, he's not experiencing problem gambling. This story illustrates that someone can experience harm even though they may not be a problem gambler. Because of the risks of harms related to gambling, we want to encourage youth to use harm reduction strategies. Like in Fred's case, setting an entertainment budget is a great start. Fred should pay his important expenses first, or put that money aside physically so that he doesn't spend the money he needs for his bills. Because gambling can be a harmful activity, we talk to youth about implementing harm reduction strategies, resources for support, and signs and symptoms of problem gambling. Next, we want to quickly review the signs of problem gambling because they may help you to illustrate your message in your video or poster. For example, the past winner included some signs of problem gambling when the main character stopped cooking for themselves and was continually fixated on playing online poker. Problem gambling is when an activity begins to affect your life in a negative way. There are signs of problem gambling, but they do differ from person to person. When addressing problem gambling, it's important to consider how that individual has changed. Consider the above, but also consider the individual's personality and typical behaviors. If you or someone you know is experiencing negative impacts as a result of gambling, there are resources at the end of this video for you to connect with. Again, this slide has some behavioral signs, including unable to stop gambling, lying about gambling, or decreasing social interactions. Next are some financial signs, which most people think of first when thinking of problem gambling. Some signs include borrowing money, stealing money, money appearing and disappearing, debt, spending money before payday, or chasing losses. Some psychological signs may be more difficult to see as they're often not tangible. However, it's important to talk to the individual if they seem like they're acting different, which could include the signs listed above. Some signs include depression or anxiety when unable to play, anger or violence when unable to play, playing to escape problems, or playing for feelings of acceptance among peers. Lastly are physical signs. Physical health impacts like headache, back pain, or strain may be seen, difficulty sleeping, fatigue, or being unable to focus on tasks. As previously mentioned, harm reduction strategies are a way that we can reduce the harm related to an activity. Gambling does have the potential for harm, which is why we can use harm reduction strategies to reduce it. In your submission, we ask that you include a relevant harm reduction strategy. This means that the harm reduction strategy should be specific to the topic you've discussed. For example, if you're talking about the freemium model, you may want to recommend that players make a budget and set a limit of how much money they will spend on the game per month. This is a way that people can still play the games that they enjoy while reducing the harm. The next video will outline the contest topics and will also go over specific harm reduction strategies that you may be interested in including. So in conclusion, gambling is relevant to youth for these 3 reasons. These are the reasons why the Y4Y contest exists. We want to remember these reasons when we're creating our videos and posters because we want to raise awareness on the potential risks, how to stay safe, and some resources for support. After listening to this presentation, you may feel like you would like to connect with someone about gambling, problem gambling, or gaming. Here are some resources that we often refer people to. First is Good to Talk. Good to Talk is a free, confidential helpline that provides counseling and information and referrals for mental health, addiction, and well-being for post-secondary students in Ontario. This is available 24/7, 365 days a year from anywhere in Ontario. We also have Connects Ontario, which used to be called the Ontario Problem Gambling Helpline. It's also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can call that number to speak with a trained professional about gambling addiction and how to seek recovery. They can also provide information through the phone, email, or web chats, and there's a directory that can give you contact information for a number of different organizations throughout the province that can provide more help with mental health, drugs, and alcohol. Lastly, we have CAMH on there as well. They're another service that can provide support for problem gambling, gaming, and internet use. Before we wrap up this video, I just want to quickly review the resources that you have access to as a participant in the Y4Y contest. First, we've just reviewed the Foundations of Gambling video, and there's a second video called Contest Topics. I recommend you watch this video next after you've watched the Foundations of Gambling video. There's also the poster and video rule documents. These documents outline everything you need to know about the contest and the process, so please review these carefully. We've also created rubrics where you can see exactly what the jury members are looking for in your submission, and there's the Copyright 101 document where you can learn more about the copyright requirements for the contest. We've created a referral information document, which is a list of resources you can include in your submission. We really want you to include a resource that is specific and relevant to the topic you're talking about. So please read through those and pick one that fits best with your contest topic. Lastly, there's a checklist, and the checklist outlines the various steps and things you need to do throughout the contest. I recommend that you print this out and keep it somewhere handy to make sure you're staying on track. If you have any questions about any of this information or any of these resources we've created, please feel free to reach out to the contest organizers as soon as possible. The next YouTube video is going to explain the contest topics in more detail. As for the next steps, after you've watched the 2 videos, we recommend picking your contest topic and booking your registration phone call. Every contestant needs to register for a registration phone call with the contest organizers, but we want you to book the phone call after you've picked your contest topic. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to the contest organizers. We wish you the best of luck in creating your submission, and we're excited to see what you come up with. Thanks so much for watching.